Welcome, welcome. Another PCOS Awareness Month live training with Candice, who will be joining us very shortly, I'm sure. But I wanted to preface this conversation with some really important notes before we get into it. Number one is this conversation is going to be about weight and weight loss with PCOS. Now, people with PCOS are at an increased risk of eating disorders and disordered eating, and we do acknowledge that. And so before we enter into this conversation, it's really important to note that if this is something that you struggle with, that maybe this conversation in this generalized format isn't for you, and I would encourage you to reach out for individual support. In addition, you can also reach out to the Butterfly Foundation, which has a free service that you can access for support as well. But we know, being in clinic all the time, how much this topic comes up with people wanting to lose weight with PCOS for a variety of reasons. And we're also going to talk a little bit about the pressure to lose weight with PCOS with Candice as well. So without any further ado, let me get Candice on. The internet is interneting is what. Hey everyone, thank you for coming live. I shall wave at you all since I have a moment to do so. Waving at everybody. Hello, hello, hello. Whilst Candice joins us. Probably going to take a minute like last time again. Thinking about it. It is thinking about it. Let's see. Whilst we wait, and you just stare at my face, just a reminder, September is PCOS Awareness Month, which means that our podcast, Fertility Friendly Food, is a PCOS mini-series for the month of September. So if you haven't already, make sure you are following our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts, because it will be a goodie. I'm just seeing if I've heard from Candice elsewhere, see if she's having issues. Telling me I projected her and I haven't. Candice is unable to join. Candice, you want to hop out and then hop back in and see if that helps? And then hopefully we can get started on the juicy part. I'm accepting. It's not getting her on. This happened last week too. So annoying. And then the recording went MIA for ages. It was so annoying. It took like 3 days to get it back. Instagram sometimes is a challenge with the live videos, and you can't really prepare for it any better than you have. Apologies, everybody. Thank you for sitting tight. Fingers crossed. This is the one. I've accepted. Hello. Are you going to work? Let's see. Yes, I know. Candice just sent me a message saying, I'm here. I'm like, I know, but I can't get you to the live. What's happening? Thanks everyone for your patience whilst we hit the button for the 11th time. Cancel invite. See if that works. Hi. Thanks for joining us. We're just having some tech issues getting Candice on. It's a great time. Just fast forward if you're watching the replay. The good stuff. Hopefully it all works out for us today. It's having a moment, that is for sure. Sorry, everybody. This is very annoying. I'm sure. Mostly for you, but somewhat for me. Says Candace unable to join. All right, what I might do, all right, we'll give it one more go, and if not, I will do it myself. Which is obviously suboptimal because Candace is like the guru in this space, but I don't want you all to miss out on the stuff you came for. So let's see. Let's see if the 13th time pressing accept invite is a charm. Oh my God, it is.
I'm here.
I was
Success.
like, no, I'm giving up. This is taking too long. It's
It
not
was
working.
one final attempt and we got there.
Welcome. I was like, oh no, I don't want to do it on my own.
No fun on your own, is it?
Yeah, it's not really that fun on my end, but that's okay. We're here. We're here to talk about weight loss and PCOS. So, Candace, for those who don't know, is one of our virtual dietitians here at the Dietologist, and I can probably say she sees the lion's share of our PCOS clients, which is a fair few. PCOS is one of the most common reproductive health conditions that affect women, and also one of the most common conditions that we see here at the Dietologist, both in the context of fertility and just for PCOS management. So before we get into it, I already gave a little bit of a content warning, but how common is weight gain, as a symptom of endometriosis, or like a bit of a common complaint or presenting issue that people come for support with?
Yeah, I think I would say that probably at least 90% come with some weight-related issues with PCOS.
Yeah.
And we know that it's around sort of that 85% are documented to experience some insulin resistance, which is one of the things that is contributing to the issues that come along with the weight gain with it. So it's definitely really, really common. And yeah, I feel like it's something that we work with a lot. And even in those who do have sort of the lean PCOS, we do tend to see that the way that they store body fat is a little bit different as well compared to sort of what we see in a typical female pattern too. So they may be a healthy weight, but they might not be sort of carrying the weight where they would ideally like it. So sometimes we're dealing with that side of things as well.
Yeah, I recall a podcast that we did either last year, the year before, I can't remember now, but with Dr. Izzy Smith, who's an endocrinologist, and we talked about lean PCOS. And one of the key things that I really got out of that episode chatting with her was that even if you have lean PCOS and quote unquote your BMI is in the normal healthy range, whatever, not that that's got much to do with anything, but just as a reference point from a population standpoint, they will still have a high proportion of visceral body fat. So it's a kind of body fat around the organs compared to people that didn't have lean PCOS in a matched kind of weight category. So it's interesting because it's that visceral fat that's going to have a potential negative consequence on our heart health, on our liver function, on all those kind of other things, and our long-term risk of type 2 diabetes and metabolic syndrome and all those kinds of things. So it is important to think about. And it's so interesting because I think back to so many of my PCOS clients and they'll be like, I gained like 10 or 20 kilos out of nowhere. It was like I came off the pill and then I gained all this weight and I thought it was the pill, but turns out I had PCOS or something like that. And it's a very common story that we hear a lot, and it's definitely very real. And then I think when you present with that kind of symptom pattern, the typical automatic response is like, oh, well, just lose the weight. Yeah. Which can feel so dismissive of the broader picture. And so there is a lot of pressure from a variety of people to lose weight with PCOS, and that isn't always the quote-unquote answer. But can you tell us a little bit more about like weight loss, and is it a necessity or a nice to have when it comes to managing PCOS optimally? Because I think there's a lot of intense pressure for people with PCOS to lose weight.
Definitely. And so I guess very often people will come to us and their medical practitioner, their doctors just told them to lose weight to manage their PCOS. And I guess the good part of that is that diet and lifestyle should be the first line of treatment. And that's certainly what we want most people to be doing as their first port of call with this. But telling someone with PCOS to just go and lose weight isn't that simple. And quite often they've already been trying for multiple years prior to coming to us to try to lose weight. So they've done every diet under the sun. It's either worked for a little while and then hasn't worked anymore, or it hasn't worked at all. Very common to people, I eat perfectly and I'm still not losing weight type thing. And they might be eating a very healthy diet, but they're not eating the right things to come into play with the underlying metabolic issues that they have with the PCOS, and that's sort of triggering the weight loss to be more challenging. So, I mean, we know if women lose weight, it does improve their symptoms, but losing weight isn't as easy to do as someone that doesn't have PCOS because of the insulin resistance that underlies it. So if somebody has insulin resistance, it's much more challenging for them to lose weight. And this is why even with people that have diabetes, they do struggle to lose weight as easily as someone that doesn't have that. So PCOS is sort of in that same boat with that insulin resistance. So they've got to work 2, 3, 4 times as hard to get the same weight loss as somebody who doesn't have those underlying metabolic issues. And so that can be really frustrating for them as well, and can be quite disheartening, really.
Yeah. I always say to people, it's like, putting in all the effort and your efforts are feeling futile, and that is really demotivating. Like, people just like, oh, just keep going, it'll come good, and da 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 da. But like, if you're somebody who's putting in a lot of time and energy and money into, following a more nutritious diet, or going to the gym, or exercising, or whatever it is, and you're really intentionally focusing on it for a period of 3 months and not seeing much of the results that you're looking for, it's really hard to keep going, because of course you're going to question, what am I doing wrong? Am I doing something wrong that I must be eating too many calories? I should just, and this is the kind of slippery slope that we see many people fall into. And I think it is a vicious cycle. And I think as well, like, it's important to acknowledge that some people genuinely want to lose weight with PCOS, and that might be an important part of their story. And for other people, it may be that hyper focus on weight loss may not actually be the best thing for them in that moment, whether that be because they're at risk of something like disordered eating, or an eating disorder, which we know is a higher risk in people with PCOS, or it's just not the right time for them to be focusing on that. But we can still actually make progress towards enhancing their PCOS management without that weight loss component, which I think was highlighted in this new guideline, which is really great to see. But what are some of the most common challenges that people with PCOS face when it comes to weight management that you found?
Yeah, so the insulin resistance factor is definitely the biggest one. Getting your blood test done for insulin levels is generally a challenge in itself, but it can be helpful to have that, just so that you can see that you're not crazy, that there is something underlying going on, because all your other blood tests can look perfect, and if your insulin's not tested, you just don't know. And sometimes you might get your insulin tested and it's fine, but it's not until we actually are consuming food, so they'll test your fasting insulin, but it's not until insulin's under stress that we might be able to pick that up. So there's different pathology that you can have done to kind of confirm it. But if people don't have the pathology, I think we work with an assumption that somebody has a degree of insulin resistance anyway. And I guess insulin resistance, it tells your body to store things. Okay, so insulin's job is to store glucose in your muscles, but it also tells your body to store everything. So you store body fat, and when you're in storage mode, it makes it very difficult to then get into fat burning mode. So it makes it more difficult for you to then lose the weight because of that. So definitely focusing on how we manage insulin resistance is always my first port of call. I think there's other factors that sit under that play into things as well. One of them is having a lower basal metabolic rate. So that's you have a lower metabolism. So people will talk about slow metabolism and whatnot. And what we do know is that women with PCOS will generally be burning less energy throughout the day compared to what we would expect them to. So, as dietitians, we have formulas that we use to calculate how much energy we think your body needs on an average day. And what we find is that if we give that to someone with PCOS, it might make them gain weight as opposed to maintain their weight. So it means that essentially they've got to keep eating less and less and less to lose weight, and that's just not sustainable in the long run. And then we can start to run into the field of nutrient deficiencies and not actually getting enough, and that can cause sort of further decline in your metabolism as well. So as I said, it is that real vicious cycle too. Another thing that women with PCOS tend to experience a lot is cravings. So people will say, they feel hungry all the time, or they never feel full, or they just have this intense desire for carbohydrate-based foods in particular. And that can be really hard to ignore in the long term. And so, when you start your diet, you might be all motivated to do that, but then, the cravings are persistent and they take over, and that can make adherence really difficult as well. And those cravings usually come from the insulin resistance things, and how your blood sugar levels are working too. There's fatigue. So women with PCOS always, or generally a large proportion of them, just talk about this general fatigue that they feel as well. So this affects your energy for your meal planning, for your exercise, for just your general food choices. When you're tired, you don't usually make the nutritious food choice. You grab sort of whatever's quick and easy. So there's lots of things that we need to factor in with that as well.
Yeah. I think the other things that one study I read recently was about sleep and insulin resistance, and that even just a healthy individual, if you get one interruption in the night in your sleep and then you go right back to sleep, that next day you're actually more insulin resistant and more likely to eat less nutritious foods, or more energy dense, nutrient poor foods, typically in the science how we refer to them. And that was just healthy individuals who had no underlying insulin resistance. So if you've got issues with your sleep, if you've got issues, it all just kind of loops in. And so sometimes we have to talk to people not just about their diet and diet and exercise and that kind of stuff, but we actually have to look at the whole picture and look at sleep, look at stress, look at mental health, because you could have every intention of wanting to lose weight or wanting to focus on diet and lifestyle, but your mental health is really terrible, or you have an awful relationship with food, and actually that becomes the bigger priority to manage. I always tell people, I always say, what the most difficult organ to work with in my job is? It's not your pancreas, it's not your digestive system. I say it's your brain. Your brain is the most important organ to be cooperating with us, not your pancreas or your small intestine or your large intestine or anything else. So it's all your ovaries, so that's really a key part. So I always talk about we all kind of have our own little analogies and everything, but I always talk about the 4 burners of nutrition, exercise, sleep, and mental health or stress or whatever. And that we need to have strategies in place for all 4 of those burners to kind of give a holistic viewpoint. Can you give us one tip for each of those areas for people with PCOS to prioritize if they're trying to prioritize weight management?
Yeah, so I think with nutrition, one of the most important things I think people, and it's not going to light the world on fire, but it's just having a consistent meal pattern, which I think is really important. So not skipping meals, just having a base regular intake of your main meals per day. There may be some snacks in between, there might not be, but just having a regular meal pattern, and then that allows us to work on the quality of what goes into those meals as well. So I would always just have that as your baseline, and then working on, well, what do we put in those meals as the next thing?
Yeah, super important. If you start skipping breakfast and then you're starving by 3 o'clock and then you're binging on chocolate in the night, all the afternoon and night eating stuff, a high percentage of the time is a direct correlation to an absence of much earlier in the day. So like meal patterning is like, it's so basic, and like you said, it's not going to light the world on fire. It's not very sexy nutrition
No.
strategy, but if you don't get, like, people are often shocked as to like how much of a difference that makes to then the choices that they then make later in the day, and that's going to help us. So okay, that's
I'm not
awesome.
hungry in the morning, but it's because
Yeah.
you're eating like a ton of calories before bed. You cut that down, suddenly your appetite in the morning goes up as well. So it has that snowball effect, and if we can flatten it all out, we can make such a difference.
Yeah, and the other thing that I find with morning is, like, once you do start eating a breakfast every day, you do want breakfast every day, but those first week or two, it's going to be a little bit of like, I really feel like it, but I'm just going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
So that's nutrition. Okay, let's talk about movement and exercise. What's your key tip there?
I think generally trying to find a place for movement most days of the week is really important. And we're not saying you've got to like hit the gym every day of the week, but we need to make sure that we're moving our bodies because we need to be. And then within that, we know with PCOS in particular, we are really interested in making sure we're doing some resistance-based activity or some weights-based training at least 2 to 3 times per week. So I'd really prioritize. I mean, it's something, if you haven't had any experience with exercise, you want to get some help with doing that. And for some people, it might mean that they go to a few Pilates classes per week, and that's some great body weight resistance based stuff. And for other people, it might be completely different. You know, you can get programs that you can do at home or at the gym or something like that, but you need to be including that resistance based training somewhere in your weeks as well.
Build some muscle.
That's it. The more muscle you have, the more you so.
Love it. All right. What about sleep? What's the sleep tip that you have for people who have PCOS?
Yeah, I think we need to have a good sleep routine. So I think we want to make sure that we are going to bed around the same time every night and trying to wake up around the same time each day. When we throw out either end and we have all these different variations of what time we go to bed and what time we wake up in the morning, your body just can't get into a natural rhythm. So it's super important to kind of bookend each day with a set bedtime, a set wake up time, and then we can build in routines. So, you know, what happens in the hour before you go to bed, which is your sleep routine, which then sets you up for more success getting to sleep, which I think's really,
sleep
definitely
hard. How many of us scrolling TikTok in bed?
No. We all do it.
Looking at myself. Do as I say, not as I do.
What is ideal is one thing. What we actually do is another.
Yeah, that's a good reminder to create. I definitely find, like, for me, I'm such a structured and routine person, so I like to have a routine that I do when I wake up and a routine when I go to sleep. Even the little things of like signposting your brain that it's getting like sleepy time soon. Washing your face, brushing your teeth, dimming the lights, diffusing oils. I don't know, whatever it is for you. Like for me, like every time I go to bed, I have to have my little silk eye mask, and I need to have the little rain noises so I can go to sleep. And that just tells my brain, it's sleepy time, turn off the noise in your brain, it's time to sleep. So, I mean, it doesn't have to be those things, but like whatever it is for you, finding that is really important. Okay, and then the last component is kind of about mental health and stress, which obviously we're no psychology experts or anything like that, but a big thing that I find is when you're really stressed and you're really busy and you're really overwhelmed, the other 3 things go, right? Like those other 3 burners, they get switched off. So it is an important thing that we do need to think about and strategize around. And if you know you've got a busy week coming up, like, can you anticipate that? So what is your kind of key tip there for people with PCOS who may be a bit stressed, a bit overwhelmed, or feeling a bit anxious?
Yeah, I think you need to find a way to kind of prioritize yourself, and that's easier said than done. I think generally speaking, if someone is really stressed, I'll look at things like, well, can we fit even a 5-minute stop to do a little bit of mindfulness or deep breathing or something along those lines. Something really simple that can just kind of calm that central nervous system down a bit, stop the stress hormones from, you know, being on high alert at that point in time. And that's something that I find to be quite effective. And it's something that generally a lot of us don't do, and certainly don't do enough of as well. So it's just, where can we put these little stops in to kind of de-stress throughout the day, just so that then your brain has a bit more capacity for those other things as well.
Yeah. I think it was a fellow dietitian who said this once on her stories, Marika Day, and she said, when life gets busier, your self-care has to get busier. And that's something that's always kind of stuck with me. It's like, okay, your life's really busy right now. That means actually you've got to be even more diligent about booking that class that you want to go to, or making time before bed to wind down, or whatever it is, whatever that thing is that helps your brain, like you actually have to prioritize it even higher than what you would if you weren't as busy. So I think that reprioritization is so important, because then you can cope with the stresses better. You can actually manage things better. I do find that my clients who are able to prioritize their nutrition and lifestyle changes, even when they're stressful and busy, they do seem to traverse those periods a little bit better. And they're often surprised, like, oh, that wasn't as hard as what I thought. And B, I'm actually coping a little bit better. And whether that be because of routine or the nutrients or blah, 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 we don't know, but like probably a combination of those things. So point being is, to wrap it up, weight loss and PCOS is a common complaint and also a common symptom of PCOS. The linchpin to weight management for PCOS is really around insulin resistance. Not everybody with PCOS is going to have a desire to lose weight, and that's okay. You can still make diet and lifestyle changes to support your PCOS management without actively losing weight. But if you do want to lose weight, that's okay too. And that you do need to have a more than just a diet approach when it comes to weight management. You need to think about nutrition, exercise, sleep, and mental health and stress as well. So, Candace, I know you've got a dash, so we might wrap it up here. But for those of you tuning in with PCOS who need one-on-one support, then please reach out, send us a message or leave a comment, and we'll be in touch with you. And we do have a specifically designed PCOS nutrition coaching program with high touch point support. So you can check in with us each week in addition to your consults and other goodies as well. Thanks, Candace. I'm glad we made it work.
We got there.
Fingers crossed next week goes smooth. We don't have The stress is real. Thanks for being patient with us, everyone, and for joining. And if you're watching the replay, thank you, and we'll catch you in the next training. Yeah. Bye, everyone. Thanks, Candace.